Hello. So this is the video about Dancer, about book 3, so that you had to read. So this part is extremely fragmented. It's fragmented in terms of places. So we're moving from New York to Leningrad, to Paris, to London, to Caracas. It's also fragmented in terms of dates, even if it's progressive. It's fragmented also in terms of people who are mentioned, people who are narrators. And the type of narration is also extremely diverse. We are moving from first person narrative to third person narrative, or from internal narration to external narration. The visions on Rudik is also extremely diverse and sometimes completely opposite. And the vision on Rudik is not the only center of attention in this part. We also have some focus on other characters who are either really essential to his art, and also characters who were in the margin of his life but who played a role and enable us to have different visions on him. So this part corresponds to the part of his life after the climax of his career. So you've got some elements that foretells the end of his career, or even the end of his life. And so we can feel that there is a sense of fragmentation, but not the fragmentation of the myth, but maybe the fragmentation of the person and the dancer. But the myth is still alive, or is still in construction. So at the beginning, the scene takes place in New York. It's a third-person narrative. So I forgot, but please take your book. And while I'm commenting the different parts of this section, please take your book and look at it. Pause the video and look at the part I'm referring to. So the first part. So it takes place in New York. It's a third-person narrative. And the style is extremely original, because you've got no punctuation, no capital letter, and it enables the Colum Machen to create and to convey dynamism, energy, and a sense of electricity that is really characteristics of Nureyev. So you can look at page 234, for example. In this part, we focus on Victor Paricci, who is Rudy's friend and in a way is the mirror of Rudik. They have lots of common points. For example, they are provocative, they are excessive, they are into drugs and sex, and they are not from Europe. But Rudik is from Ufa, and Paricci is from Venezuela. They are also completely devoted to their mother that they had to abandon and to leave to fulfill their dream. And finally, they are people who are in a way out of reach. They are always on the move. They are always gone, or at the same time always there and always somewhere else. So in a way, the portrait of his friend is indirectly the portrait of Rudik as a person, and as person, the two of them, who owns the world. So here you can see this, page 241. Then the next section takes place in Leningrad in 1975-1976. It's a first-person narrative and a very intimate narration, because the I is Yulia, and so we can see that times is moving on. That time is passing by, because we've got references to her age, to the fact that she has no child. So this idea of life that is, or a life that is, different steps, different step and parts of her life, and obviously of Nuriyev's life. Then, so this was 260. Then you've got a section, a small section about Andy Rowell's diaries. So here we've got a famous person who is used as a first-person narrator. So, and in this section, Rowell gives a very negative portrait of Nureyev as an excessive and mean dancer. In the next two following section, we've got the mention of Odile, who is the maid of Nureyev. The first part is a first-person narrative, and so it gives a very intimate portrait of Nureyev through this first-person narrative. And so we've got the point of view of a person from the margin, who is in a way helping the reader to understand what is inside. So she's in a way from the frame, as if we were talking about a painting. She's from the frame, and she's illustrating and highlighting what is at the center of the painting. So in a way to present Nureyev not only as a myth, but as an ordinary person. And here in these two parts, in these two sections, with the wedding of Odile, for example, we can see Nureyev, who is showing empathy, compassion, and with this idea of romance and love between Odile and her husband. Then we're going to, so Colum Machen is focusing on Margot. So Margot, the dance partner of Nureyev, and in a way the equivalent of Nureyev as a female dancer. And so, as we know, Margot is a bit older than Nureyev. And here the section focuses on Margot's body, and how we have already seen that Margot's body is aging, with a focus on her feet and the suffering that she has to undergo. And here it's more than suffering, because she's suffering from cancer. And so, in a way, as Margot and Nureyev are in a way equivalent or similar, the reader is warned about the future aging of Nureyev and the future death of Nureyev. So in a way there's a parallel there. So in this section, Margot, it's a third-person narrative, but from an internal point of view, because we've got the point of view of Margot, and she's delivering deep reflection about love and life, so very mature and philosophical ideas. Then you've got, I think 285, you've got a section which is very original, because we've got transcript of interviews interviews of people who have known Nureyev, so maybe we can guess that it's transcript from interviews that happened after the death of Nureyev, so interviews, we guess, of dancers, of male partners. And this section is particularly original, because we've got only the answers without the questions. So it's a series of random and disconnected answers about different people who have known Nureyev and who give their vision of Nureyev. So once again, Colum Machen is playing with the reader, because the reader has to be active, and is the one who has to reconnect the different question with the different answers, to, if we take the metaphor of the painting, to draw the lines between the different points and between the different elements. Then 287, you've got a series of quotes by famous people like Kennedy or Truman Capote. So here contrary to Andy Rowell, Nureyev is defined as a hero, so 287. So here other contrasts in the portrait of Nureyev by famous people. Then, so in different type of narration, again, so we've got a letter by Victor Parecci, who announces to Nureyev that he has moved to Caracas and that he's going to die extremely soon. So once again, we've got the mention of disease, like the cancer of Margot, and the idea of death, which is in a way hanging over Nureyev. Then we've got the next section is first-person narrative with the I, Odile, and here it's a focus on loneliness and sadness of these two persons, and so it can also refer to the life of Nureyev and the end of his life. Then, page 303, we go back to London, to Brighton, and here it's another type of narration. So, as we said at the beginning, it's extremely diverse in terms of techniques of narration. And so here it's a list, okay, as at the beginning of the book. So it's the list of all the injuries of Nureyev. So we've got a sense of accumulation, enumeration of things that are taking Nureyev down, and the fact that his body is suffering, and his body as dancer is suffering, which might predict the end of his career. And we can also draw a parallel with the injuries of Margot. And finally, the last, but least section of this book, book 3, it's a first-person narrative, Odile, once again the maid of Nureyev, who is extremely present in this scene and gives a very intimate, moving and emotional portrait of Nureyev. And here, Odile is the one who is defending Nureyev against all the newspapers' bad comments on him, and who is showing love and showing also compassion to him. So, in a way, it seems that she's the only one to give support to Nureyev. And finally, so the last section of the book is a list of body injuries again, so the second of this section, so create once again this sense of accumulation of heaviness, and it seems to predict that that Nureyev is going to cease to exist as a person, and if he ceases to exist as a person, is going to cease to exist to stop existing as a dancer, because we said that that his essence is to be a dancer. So this is the end of this book 3, which is overwhelmed by references to death, to suffering, to diseases, to the downsides, and all this, okay, which announces the last book, which is extremely short, and which so the reader, which is going to be about the end of his life and career. So see you in the next video to talk about book 4.